Good morning. This morning I listened to Speaker Pelosi give us historical references. The one that she skipped was Alexander Hamilton when he wrote, "There will always be the greatest danger that the decision to use the impeachment power would be driven by partisan animosity instead of real demonstrations of innocence or guilt." Today is the day that Hamilton warned us. Today, with the Speaker's announcement, she has weakened this nation. It was not new news. They always had this pre-written timeline from the day they got sworn in. Let's go through their timeline. After winning the majority, they had to decide who would become the chairs of their committees. The Impeachment Committee Judiciary had a campaign for it. Nadler campaigned on the theme that he would be the best for impeachment, and he won the position. On the very first day of swearing in by their new freshmen, they got them the majority. After holding their hand up and swearing to the Constitution, in celebration that night, Congresswoman Tlaib said, "We are going to impeach the mother." That was their goal from the beginning. Or in May of 2019 of this year, Al Green, who has entered the impeachment from the very beginning, said if we do not impeach the president, he will get reelected, to show them the true reason of why their timeline is written. The sad part about this timeline, they've always had it written, they just never had a case or proof, so they had to bring professors in. Had Speaker Pelosi spent at least 48 hours and waited until the transcript came forth, America would not have to go through this nightmare. If Speaker Pelosi would have paused and actually listened to the hearing yesterday, she probably would not have made the decision that she made today to try to change her own timeline. Had she listened to the Democrat constitutional scholar, Jonathan Turley, he said there was no bribery, no extortion, no obstruction of justice, no abuse of power. He said this would be the fastest, thinnest, weakest impeachment in U.S. history. This is from the individual who did not vote for the president. This is from the individual who is not a Republican. The further they get from their timeline, the further they get away from their own requirements of an impeachment. Even if this year of March, the Speaker of the House said impeachment was so destructive to the nation that it had to be overwhelming, compelling, and bipartisan. That was the criteria she laid out for the nation and for her conference. It's just not the criteria she held herself to. This is the day that Alexander Hamilton feared and warned would come. This is the day the nation is weaker because they surely cannot put their animosity or their fear of losing an election in the future in front of all the other things that the American people want. They don't even have a budget. We don't even have a trade agreement that was signed more than a year ago to make this country stronger. We're not lowering drug prices. We're not rebuilding this nation. Why? Because the timeline that they started from the day they were sworn in, down to the very freshmen announcing what they would do on the night they were sworn in, to the selection of the chairs of who would oversee the impeachment, has come true today. It's not a day that history will be proud of. It's not a day I hope America ever repeats. Take questions. Yes.
In 2016, you said that then candidate Donald Trump was one of two people who were paid by Vladimir Putin, the other being former Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. Do you still believe that Vladimir Putin
I didn't believe
pays
then it
the
was a
president?
joke, and you took it to an extent that's not, and that's really embarrassing that you would even ask that. Yes.
You mentioned that Speaker Pelosi often pointed to a need for bipartisanship.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guarantee that there will be no defectors here? The Republicans will be united?
I don't need to guarantee. I'll show you the vote. If she laid out a criteria, the Speaker of the House, telling the American public of March of this year that impeachment was so divisive that it would divide the nation, that the only way we could move down that it had to be compelling, it had to be overwhelming, and it had to be bipartisan. Well, we've had that vote on the floor for an impeachment inquiry. And the only bipartisan vote that turned out there was not to move forward. So the standard that she gave to the nation, that she gave to her own conference, she will not hold her own self to. Why? Because she wrote this timeline before she was even sworn in for president. She picked the committee chairs based upon what she wanted to accomplish in the timeline. The freshmen that gave them the majority said it on the night they were sworn in. The individuals that first moved the impeachment said the reason why they were afraid of losing. The committee that it went to yesterday, 2/3 of them, if this is the jury, had already voted for impeachment before they heard. If they had listened, and who'd they select? 3 Democrats to a witness that Republicans could invite? We invited a Democrat. We didn't invite a Republican. We invited a constitutional scholar, someone who didn't even vote for the president. Why? Because this is too important. We would stick to our own standards of constitutionality. And what did that individual say? It's the weakest, it's the thinnest, and it's the fastest impeachment in history. And he said there was no bribery. But you know what's more importantly what Turley said? He said if there is abuse of power that you want to impeach this president over, that's not the case. It's actually the abuse of Congress if you move forward based upon what they want to do. Why would they not listen to that? Why would she not hold herself to the standard she said to move forward?
But that vote was before we had heard any witnesses. That was before this investigation. Now, are you confident that not a single Republican will back this?
I am more confident that the bipartisan vote on impeachment that comes to the floor will be no. Yes, sir.
All of the witnesses yesterday, including Mr. Turley, though, expressed concern about the obstruction part of this, that the president's just blanket refusal to comply with any subpoenas. Why shouldn't the president of the United States have to comply with lawful subpoenas from Congress? And do you worry that this president sets an example for a Democratic president in the future who might just say, I'm not doing it?
I watched President Obama do this. If you watched the hearing yesterday, Turley was asked the question from John Radcliffe. And he stated and agreed, no bribery, no extortion, no obstruction of justice, no abuse of power. That was the answer. I do not understand what they have going forward. They have a timeline, but they have no proof, so they brought professors in. They selected professors that were donors to the Democratic Party. We selected a Democrat who did not vote for the president. We selected an individual who is probably the one that is respected the most when it comes to a scholar on constitutionality, because we take this so important and we believe exactly what the speaker said back in March, that this is so divisive. You need something overwhelming. You need something compelling, and it doesn't meet the criteria.
Why shouldn't the president have to comply with the subpoena? Why shouldn't the investigation be
I think
complete?
if you watched the president's or read the president's letter from his attorney from the White House, if he had a process the same as Bill Clinton. So your first question should be, why didn't the speaker, if she wanted to go through impeachment and she's not going to stick to her own criteria, why wouldn't she create a fair process? Why wouldn't she create the same process that Bill Clinton or Richard Nixon had? Because it didn't fit their timeline. Why did we extend one more week in December in a continuing resolution? Because that met the timeline of what they'd written, what they wanted to do impeachment. And in that letter, the president said he would comply if he had a fair process. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Have you spoken to the president the last couple of days? Do you expect to speak to him today? And how do you look at the decision of whether the president should participate going forward?
I spoke to the president twice yesterday. I spoke to the president quite often. I tell you what the president and I talk about, the things that America should be doing. USMCA. We talked about trying to get USMCA done. We talk about a number of different issues moving forward. He called me first in the morning when he was over at the NATO meetings. Here was the president overseas making America stronger. What were the Democrats doing? Dividing us further. It's interesting of what they do and when they do it. When she first announced to move forward, the president was at the UN when the rest of the world was there. When they had their hearing, the president was with other foreign leaders as well. I've always thought, regardless of party, you'd put this country first. We've watched from the timeline and from the swearing in that the party means more to them than the country.
Yes.
Mr. Leader, should he participate though?
USMCA. We're hearing from sources that the Trump administration is giving Pelosi weaker patent protections, more things that the unions want on labor rights. Are you worried that Trump might cut a deal that leaves out Republican priorities and makes it hard for you to vote for that?
No, I'm more worried about America missing an opportunity. That America missing an opportunity to be stronger. Every economist will tell you it'll only make our country stronger. I'm worried that America, with their number one and number two traders when it comes to Mexico and Canada, in a negotiation with China and what the future holds, that China's our number three trader. That if we're in a negotiation with China, we all know what the future holds. If we're going to be competing, we need to be stronger. We would get a better agreement with China if we had the USMCA done. We would be in a stronger position. But the Speaker is more concerned about tearing the president down instead of building the country up.
Mr. Leader.
Yes.
Mr. Leader, I gather you were watching just now when the Speaker, in rather effusive terms, denied that there is any personal animus on her part that is motivating the impeachment drive. Representative Collins has suggested as much in the hearing yesterday when he intimated that the Democrats are simply impeaching President Trump because they don't like the guy. You probably also heard her invoke her Catholicism. Do you take the Speaker at her word? Do you believe her? Do you believe she's telling the truth when she says she does not hate the president, and that's not what this is about?
Look, I'll take them at their word when Congresswoman Tlaib said on her very first day in Congress of what she referred to the president, which I wouldn't think anyone would want to refer to them, that she was going to impeach him. Or when Adam Schiff continued to lie to the American public, only get to the point that they are today. Or when he said he was going to send them back to the Golden Throne.
I asked about the Speaker.
I'll take the Speaker at her word, but if she paused for a moment, if she looked at just the facts, she would not have made that determination. If she paused and she actually listened to the hearing yesterday on what a Democrat who did not vote for the president, who has studied the Constitution, who most at any time has been a witness for Democrats or Republicans, based upon his own ability as a scholar, that this is the weakest, the thinnest impeachment in the history of America, that there is no bribery, no extortion, no obstruction of justice, and no abuse of power.
So you don't accept what she said just now?
Actually, Mr. Leader,
I think I have a
that's
hard
not-
time believing her.
Mr.
Yes,
That's
Judge.
not true.
You've been saying, the Republicans have been saying this facts are disputed. One of the facts that's not is the president did in fact ask the Ukrainian president to investigate Joe Biden. Is it ever appropriate for a president to ask a foreign country to investigate Joe Biden?
Okay, let's stick to the facts. The president asked a country to participate in a case that happened in 2016. That's 100% legal. That happens every day in America dealing with other countries. It is a case that the U.S. attorney had already opened. At every single time of every witness that the Democrats got to select and control, they were asked the question. The two best witnesses they had that they started this all with. Can you name one article that she should be impeached upon? No one could say a word. So why are we going through this nightmare? It goes back to the very first day after the election. They had a goal, they wrote a timeline, and they had to change the basis and move it to Adam Schiff's committee, and they're sticking to that timeline. So the answer to your question, they've always wanted to impeach the president. You watch them at their words, watch them at their actions, watch them what they have done. The most important part here is Alexander Hamilton, founding father, was concerned and warned us that this day could come. History will look back today and it'll be a sad day. We hope that at any time, whoever has this power in this country, that they never repeat what Alexander warned us would come, and that this day will never happen again in America. Thank you very much.